The judge cracked with the back of an axe the shin bone of an antelope, and the hot marrow dripped smoking on the stones. They watched him. The subject was war. The good book says that he that lives by the sword shall perish by the sword, said the black. The judge smiled, his face shining with grease. What right man would have it any other way, he said. The good book does indeed count war and evil, said Irving. Yet there's many a bloody tale of war inside it. It makes no difference what men think of war, said the judge. War endures. As well ask men that they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way. He turned to Brown, from whom he'd heard some whispered slur or demur. Ah, Davy, he said, it's your own trade we honor here. Why not rather take a small bow? Let each acknowledge each. My trade? Certainly. What is my trade? War. War is your trade, is it not? And it ain't yours? Mine too, very much so. What about all the notebooks and bones and stuff? All other trades are contained in that of war. Is that why war endures? No. It endures because young men love it, and old men love it in them. Those that fought, those that did not. That's your notion. The judge smiled. Men are born for games, and nothing else. Every child knows that play is nobler than work. He knows, too, that the worth or merit of a game is not inherent in the game itself, but rather in the value of that which is put at hazard. Games of chance require a wager to have meaning at all. Games of sport involve the skill and the strength of the opponents, and the humiliation of defeat and the pride of victory are in themselves sufficient stake, because they inher in the worth of the principles and define them. But trial of chance or trial of worth, all games aspire to the condition of war, for here that which is wagered swallows up game, player, all. Suppose two men at cards with nothing to wager save their lives. Who has not heard such a tale? A turn of the card. The whole universe for such a player has labored, clanking to this moment, which will tell if he is to die at that man's hand or that man at his. What more certain validation of a man's worth could there be? This enhancement of the game to its ultimate state admits no argument concerning the notion of fate. The selection of one man over another is a preference absolute and irrevocable, and it is a dull man indeed who could reckon so profound a decision without agency or significance either one. In such games as have for their stake the annihilation of the defeated, the decisions are quite clear. This man, holding this particular arrangement of cards in his hand, is thereby removed from existence. This is the nature of war, whose stakes is at once the game and the authority and the justification. Seen so, war is the truest form of divination. It is the testing of one's will and the will of another within the larger will, which, because it binds them, is therefore forced to select. War is the ultimate game because war is at last a forcing of the unity of existence. War is God. Brown studied the judge. You're crazy, Holden. Crazy at last. The judge smiled. Might does not make right, said Irving. The man that wins in some combat is not vindicated morally. Moral law is an invention of mankind for the disenfranchisement of the powerful in favor of the weak. Historical law subverts it at every turn. A moral view can never be proven right or wrong by an ultimate test. A man falling dead in a duel is not thought thereby to be proven in error as to his views. His very involvement in such a trial gives evidence of a new and broader view. The willingness of the principals to forego further argument as a triviality, which it in fact is, and to petition directly the chambers of the historical absolute, clearly indicates of how little moment are the opinions, and of what great moment the divergences thereof. Man's vanity may well approach the infinite in capacity, but his knowledge remains imperfect, and however much he comes to value his judgments, ultimately he must submit them before a higher court. Here there can be no special pleading. Here are considerations of equity and rectitude, and moral right rendered void and without warrant, and here are the views of the litigants despised. Decisions of life and death, of what shall be and what shall not, beggar all question of right. In elections of those magnitudes are all lesser ones subsumed, moral, spiritual, and natural. The judge searched out the circle for disputants. But what says the priest? He says. Tobin looked up. The priest does not say. The priest does not say, said the judge. Nihil dicit. But the priest has said, for the priest has put by the robes of his craft and taken up the tools of that higher calling which all men honor. The priest also would be no God-server, but a God himself. Tobin shook his head. You've a blasphemous tongue, Holden. And in truth, I was never a priest, but only a novitiate to the order. Journeyman priest or apprentice priest, said the judge. Men of God and men of war have strange affinities. I'll not second-say you and your notions, said Tobin. Don't ask it. Ah, priest, said the judge, what could I ask of you that you have not already given? Chapter 17. For the next 2 weeks, they would ride by night. They would make no fire. They had struck the shoes from their horses and filled the nail holes in with clay, and those who still had tobacco used their pouches to spit in, and they slept in caves and on bare stone. They rode their horses through the tracks of their dismounting, and they buried their stool like cats, and they barely spoke at all. Crossing those barren gravel reefs in the night, they seemed remote and without substance, like a patrol condemned to ride out some ancient curse, a thing surmised from the blackness by the creak of leather and the chink of metal. They cut the throats of the pack animals and jerked and divided the meat, and they traveled under the cape of the wild mountains, upon a broad soda plain with dry thunder to the south and rumors of light. Under a gibbous moon, horse and rider spancelled to their shadows on the snow-blue ground, and in each flare of lightning, as the storm advanced, those self-same forms rearing with a terrible redundancy behind them, like some third aspect of their presence hammered out black and wild upon the naked grounds. They rode on. They rode like men invested with a purpose, whose origins were antecedent to them, like blood legates of an order both imperative and remote. For although each man among them was discreet unto himself, conjoined they made a thing that had not been before, and in that communal soul were wastes hardly reckonable, more than those wooded regions on old maps where monsters do live, and where there is nothing other of the known world save conjectural winds. They crossed the Del Norte and rode south into a land more hostile yet. All day they crouched like owls under the niggard acacia shade and peered out upon the cooking world. Dust devils stood on the horizon like the smoke of distant fires, but of living thing there was none. They eyed the sun in its circus, and at dusk they rode out upon the cooling plain where the western sky was the color of blood. At a desert well, they dismounted and drank jaw to jaw with their horses, and remounted and rode on. The little desert wolves yapped, and in the dark, and Glanton's dog trotted beneath the horse's belly, its footfalls stitched precisely among the hooves. That night they were visited with a plague of hail out of a faultless sky, and the horses shied and moaned, and the men dismounted and sat upon the ground with their saddles over their heads, while the hail leaped in the sand like small lucent eggs concocted alchemically out of the desert darkness. When they resaddled and rode on, they went for miles through cobbled ice, while a polar moon rose like a blind cat's eye up over the rim of the world. In the night they passed the lights of a village on the plain, but they did not alter from their course. Toward the morning they saw fires on the horizon. Glanton sent the Delawares. Already the dawn star burned pale in the east. When they returned, they squatted with Glanton and the judge and the Brown brothers, and spoke and gestured, and then all remounted and moved on. 5 wagons smoldered on the desert floor, and the riders dismounted and moved among the bodies of the dead Argonauts in silence. Those right pilgrims nameless among the stones with their terrible wounds, the viscera spilled from their sides, and the naked torsos bristling with arrow shafts. Some by their beards were men, but yet wore strange menstrual wounds between their legs, and no man's parts, for these had been cut away and hung dark and strange from their grinning mouths. In their wigs of dry blood they lay gazing up with ape's eyes at brother sun now rising in the east. The wagons were no more than embers armatured with the blackened shapes of hoop iron and tires, the red-hot axles quaking deep within the coals. The riders squatted at the fires and boiled water and drank coffee and roasted meat and lay down to sleep among the dead.